This is the Pastor with No Answers, and we are here with Ryan Gerard, and you are from where, Ryan?
I'm from the Toronto area, if that makes it easier. It's a little town called Curtis, but it's in the greater Toronto area. So
Gotcha. Well, you consider yourself an author? Is that fair enough to say? I mean, that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about your book. So I guess if you write a book, you're an author. And it's funny because I've written a book, and it would never occur to me to tell someone I'm an author. Hey, what do you do for a living? Yeah, pastor, I podcast, author doesn't even come to mind.
Yeah, it's not my main source of income or my profession per se, I guess. But it's funny because I was at a book sales thing and somebody actually told me just what you just said. She's like, because I was kind of just trying to play the humble card. Yeah, I wrote this book. I'm just this guy from a local town. And she kind of like, no, you're an author. You wrote a book.
Right.
You're an author. So I was like, yeah, fair enough. So yeah, I guess so. Self-published, but I haven't made it to the big time companies yet. But self-published, yeah.
Now, is that something that you've been trying to do?
Yeah, definitely. It's proving more difficult though. It's in today's day and age, I think, with writing anything, because there's this thing called the internet.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anybody can write something and call themselves a writer or an author. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like the internet has made it to where there is more opportunities, but then I guess more competition too. And I'd say
exactly.
the competition drowns the opportunities for the most part. So
it's unfortunate. It's good and bad, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I want to talk about your book and make fun of Christian movies. Pretty much, is that cool for 30 minutes?
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
No, so
awesome.
What do you, before we get into your book, what do you think about, just kind of give me a snapshot of what you think about the Christian entertainment industry? And I guess my mind immediately goes to movies and music. But maybe you've read some Christian fiction books. I don't know.
The furthest I've gone outside of, I guess, what you're going to call Christian books, I've read like Frank Peretti's stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with him. He writes a lot of like supernatural.
Yeah, definitely heard the name.
Demonic, like Revelation kind of stuff. That's the furthest I've gone. I haven't really ventured out into a lot of Christian authors. As far as movies and stuff go, I mean, I grew up on the stuff, and I didn't know any better, right? So I got to a point in life where you're trying to find your identity as a Christian, I guess, and you're talking to other non-believers, I guess, I don't even like using that word, but other people, and trying to share stuff with them, and you say, oh yeah, check out this movie or this book, but there is nothing to show them that I could like,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, I check it out, and they'll be like, yeah, that was a good movie, man. Thanks for recommending that, because most of them are like cheese, like so.
And here's the thing,
it's hard.
And here's the thing too, is I'm sometimes a sucker for those movies. Now, I have to be in a really weird situation to actually sit down and intentionally watch one. But when they first started coming out, man, I mean, what was it? Fireproof on with Kirk Cameron. I mean, as cheesy as can be, and it got me. And I put them in the same category as like Hallmark movies. You can't get the best actors. You don't have the best producers, but there's so many people that are addicted to Hallmark movies. Like Christmas rolls around, my wife is recording every single one of them, and I'd say she has pretty good taste in art and everything. But yeah, I think unfortunately, the Christian movies that are making so much money, obviously they're making the money because all the Christians are going to it, but it ends up being more of a rah, 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 we're Christians, instead of anything that would be useful to the world. Now, that's a very naive statement to make maybe, but I think it's probably true because of like what you just said. You're not going to invite a buddy that knows nothing about God, cares nothing about church, and say, hey, why don't you come to the War Room showing with me?
Exactly. And that's just it. Those movies, not necessarily to put them down or say that they're bad, but they're only good for us.
Right.
We can share them in our men's Bible study or whatever. You can share it in a ladies' study or a church group. But outside of that, I mean, they're kind of useless, to be frank. I mean,
it's
not that they're useless. That's a bad thing to say. To be fair to them, they've done some good stuff, but it's only good for us and for edifying within the body. If you want to go outside and share these things with, and if the goal is to minister and to evangelize, then these tools aren't really the best option
Sure.
in my.
Yeah, it's like Christians are trying to establish their own brand, and
Yeah.
I like what you said. It's kind of useless if you are thinking along the lines of reaching out to people, sharing the gospel and everything. But hey, if you are simply wanting to create art that is specifically for Christians, knock yourself out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's almost, because you made a comment about the actors. It's almost the way the rest of the world looks at these things. It's almost like a joke.
Yeah.
Because you have actors like you said, like Kirk Cameron,
Right.
and and that other one with Kevin Sorbo. Like people just like, I just think of that cheesy Hercules show with him. He's like all these B-list actors that nobody takes seriously, right? I mean,
Right.
if they got their stuff together and made a real like badass movie, I think you'd make a difference. You know what I mean? People would start to think, oh, maybe these guys are onto something. Just make a movie about life and the human condition.
Right.
It doesn't have to be about
Right.
like, what does God say about this, or what does God say about marriage, or
Totally.
these things like
and,
that.
and it would make me feel so much more comfortable too if Christians that were so into these movies let that be your thing and don't talk about it to other people like it's unbelievable. Like, oh, I mean, I know you think Christian movies are cheesy, but this one is really awesome. Like this one you have to go check out. It's just like, let's just watch that together as Christians. All right, we'll keep
sure.
those secret.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
do you think that the Christian movie industry, do you think in time evolves to a better quality, more general audience, or do you think we keep progressing in this Christian brand type of movies?
I think we're stuck in the Christian brand. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't seen anything to date. Maybe there's stuff that I'm unaware of.
Yeah.
But I know for everything I've seen has been, courageous.
Yeah.
Which again, we watched that as a men's Bible study and took information out of it for our lives and stuff. But I'm not going to go and share that with my buddies at work and say, hey, because I work in the law enforcement agency as well. So for that movie, especially because it was about cops,
Right.
for me to go and share with my officer buddies, hey man, you check out this movie. I don't think I would,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that I mean, one thing that's easy for you and I and other people to overlook is there are, from what I understand, there are Christians that are saying, "Hey, I want to make a movie," but nobody would ever know that the producers are Christians. Like, have you seen The Conjuring? Their horror movies, Conjuring 1 and 2. From what I understand from multiple people, it was made by Christians, but you would never ever know that. Now, obviously, it's demonic and you've got all the spiritual stuff, but pretty much it's a horror movie. And if you like horror movies, you'd like The Conjuring.
Yeah, I'm not into big horror, and I've heard of the movies.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's shocking.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but again, that kind of brings up, why, just because you're a Christian, do you have to make a God message movie? I mean, that's your life. It's
Right.
your whole, you know what I mean? It's totally cool, but why do you have to make something that says rah rah Jesus,
Right.
like you said before?
Yeah, and I think it's because the ultimate aim for a Christian, and I will certainly applaud this sort of approach. Now, I don't think it is that beneficial, and just some of my changing thoughts on theology and everything, not even necessary. But I do think the motivation is pretty founded from the perspective of they are making these movies to reach people for Christ. That is their aim. They see this as, okay, this will reach people. This is our job as Christians. We got to somehow get the unbelievers in. Like, I really do think that's the mentality. And that's just, people have to see that that's just going to ruin the art. Like, if you have that
Right.
sort of motivation, and it's almost like an ulterior motive that is not under the surface, people can get it. People know.
Yeah.
So how do you when it comes to the material that you write, and it's called The Baptist, right?
Yeah, it's a 3-part series called The
Yep.
Baptist.
And how would you say you approach? Obviously, now we're talking about a book, but same sort of thing. I mean, your book could be a movie. How do you approach things differently as a Christian when it comes to the sort of stuff that we're talking about?
So the book itself is not. Let me say, so the idea I had the idea when I was I was not a little kid. I was about a teenager when I got the idea for the story.
Yeah.
And I got the idea just for a little background sake. I got the idea sitting in countless church sermons and Bible studies or whatever, what have you, and just hearing the theme. They would talk about the gospel and then Jesus being there and being the Messiah and know how nobody got it, and then being like, and everybody would say, well, these stupid disciples, they were so dumb. How did they not get it? How did they not realize that this guy was who he says he was, and and all this stuff, and the Pharisees, how could they not see who he was, who he says he was,
Yeah.
and how did they kill him? All that stuff. And I just got to thinking, well, if this guy was around today,
Yeah.
for the first time, and this guy just shows up saying, "Hey, I'm the Son of God, by the way." I think a lot of us, especially in today's society, a lot of us would even more so say, like, who the heck is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
We would all think he was crazy too, and we would be dumb and we wouldn't get it either.
Right.
Was kind of the idea. So then the idea thing, look, I want to, my dream was to be in the movie business by now,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously, real life happens and
Right.
that good stuff. But I still had the idea, so and I wanted to develop this into a movie. So I started thinking, how am I going to do that? And then the obvious kind of genre became time travel, because then I could play with timelines, and the book essentially is about a time travel experiment gone wrong,
Right.
in which so the ancient biblical times are brought forward to today's modern times, and then people can see what it would be like if these things happen today. And again, that comes from conversations with friends over and over again of all my non-Christian friends saying to me, well, I just can't get into this book that was written 2,000, 3,000 years ago. I can't relate to this. They're talking about all this ancient stuff. It's old. We have computers and technology now. I can't relate to that. It's and everybody says one of the biggest criticisms for Christianity is you guys believe in this stuff that's written 2,000 years ago, like modernized,
Yeah.
So and then I just, I wanted people to be able to kind of relate to it. So why not write a piece of fiction that makes it more easily relatable to people?
Yeah.
So then the idea was developed into this story about time travel and all this stuff. But anyway, that's where the idea came from, and that's where it's going. And then the approach I take to writing, to answer your question, is I don't write it. I try not to be very preachy.
Yeah.
I don't want people, like, because you were saying that their goal is to evangelize, and I think the people outside the church who are seeing these movies feel that, and they kind of don't want to be preached at, because they know, this is a Christian movie. I'm going to go see this, and they're going to talk about God. I don't want to hear that. So they don't bother going to see it because they know it's Christian.
Yeah.
And with my stuff, I just try to. It's more just a story about the human condition, and none of the characters in the book are Christian. They're all just regular dudes who experience life, and the main character is a police officer who just sees all this evil stuff because of his job, and he gets angry with the state of the world. So it just deals with the human condition and evil and sin, and how we all kind of experience it, not just Christian.
Yeah.
And it's written just raw and gritty and real. Like, the dialogue is just like how everybody else would talk. It's not like, if the character is upset, he'll say he's upset. He won't be like, oh, darn it, I stubbed my toe. He's gonna say something else. So.
Yeah. So obviously, and I don't even know if I think the stores are around. I just don't see them in Charleston. But all the family Christian stores, and they wouldn't be able to sell it, I presume.
See, that's the thing, and I've been struggling with this. I'm very weary to bring this up, even to people within my own church that I go to. I mean, everybody at my church knows I wrote a book,
right? And
some of them kind of ask me, "Hey, I want to read it." And my first initial reaction as a human being, I guess, or as a Christian, is kind of like, "Ooh, like I don't know if I want you to read it, because you're going to read it and then think I'm a sinner or a heathen, or." Maybe they won't. Maybe I'm completely wrong and just being too over judgmental or scared, and I'm being fearful, and but I don't know. And I just get this sense of sharing it with Christians, certain people, they would just say, well, how can you get that comment that I'm
Totally.
scared of? How can you call yourself a Christian if you wrote this? How can you be promoting this stuff? You're a Christian. You shouldn't be saying this stuff. You shouldn't be. And I get fearful of that. So I've shared it with a few people at the church, and I've gotten a good response and been proven wrong
Yeah.
so far. But there is people that I can have, like I've had conversations about the book with them, and just like you and I are having. But I still got that sense that once they pick it up and read,
Yeah.
it's not that it's gratuitous, but the first time there's a swear word, they're going to be like, "Well,
Right.
how can you write this?" Like, and that's just my worry. But
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I've reached out to a few Christian bookstores, and one of them surprisingly, because they had first said, "Well, we have to read everything first before we put it on the shelf." So then right there, I was like, "Ah, crap!" Like,
Right.
they're going to read this.
You were trying to sneak it in, dude. You were trying to
They're
sneak it in.
no. Yeah, so she writes me back saying, I got to read it first. Give me a couple weeks. So I said, okay, cool. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And then actually I emailed back and they said, she's like, yeah, you're right. It's kind of edgy. But then she said, we're looking for that kind of thing. We're looking to appeal to a broader audience. So maybe there's a chance. I don't know.
Dude, it's crazy, man. Things have got to change, man. Like I don't sell too many ads on this podcast, and typically when I do, it's because people reach out to me, and then I'm able to give them a good deal because that's not really my focus. But there's a month, a couple of years ago, where I was looking into possible opportunities for people to advertise on here. And so there was a couple of Christian software for smaller churches and this and that. And I reached out to them, and they were super interested in the concept of advertising on a podcast. But then they got back with me a couple weeks later and says, hey, due to the content on your podcast, we're just a little uneasy about being affiliated with you guys. And I'm like, first of all, from a business standpoint, that is really silly. Like, you having a commercial on my podcast does not mean that you are into this podcast. It means you're trying to sell your daggum product.
Yeah.
And second of all, it's just like, this podcast is generally tame in my opinion, but just the fact that we talk about taboo sorts of things, I guess, is concerning for them. So you think that, with the spiritual content in your book and it not being preachy, do you feel confident that just anyone who likes that genre of fiction, would you call it science fiction?
Well, it's a kind of a cross genre because it's science fiction only because of the time travel element.
Yeah.
But it's also like a police action drama.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's an apocalyptic epic series because there's just a three-parter. Because by the end of it, without saying too much, by part three, it's World War III.
Yeah.
So it's apocalyptic. It's a couple of genres mixed together. So I mean,
so you're confident that anybody would like it, right?
Oh, for sure. I think the way it's written, it's not. I mean, if you're a smart person, halfway through the series, you'll realize, oh, wait a second, this is something to do with religion.
Yeah.
Like a stupid person won't miss that.
Right.
But it's not like it's in your face. Hey, you got to change. You're a sinner. Repent.
Right.
Or it's not that kind of a message. I mean,
yeah. As you were writing, were there any natural impulses that you had as far as content of your story, ways of describing things that even you had to make concessions for and be like, that's just a little too far. I probably shouldn't do that.
Yep, totally. There was a few scenes. I actually rewrote the book like 3-4 times because I published it, printed it without some of the swear words.
Yeah.
And then I second guessed myself and said, you know what? It's part of the story. I'm gonna go for this gritty feel. I'm gonna put them back in. And then I reprinted it.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it some more, and I was like, yeah, maybe I should take them out.
Yeah.
And then I printed it again. And then I went back and forth a few times. Eventually left it the way it was. I went back and changed a few things, but ultimately I ended up staying with most of the original rights with. Yeah. And again, it's not like it's every other word like a Martin Scorsese movie, you know what I mean? But it's just every once in a while the characters swear and there's violence in the book and there's no like pornographic sex scenes, but there's one
Yeah.
between a husband and wife, and it doesn't really get into detail, but it just kind of says, oh, they had sex. But even
Yeah.
then, I'm like, do I have that in the book? And why do I think that way? Why
Right.
do I have to?
Right. Well, the violence thing always tickles me to death. Now, I can see someone saying, "Yeah, but movies they go too far and everything." But if you think books should not have violent content, then don't read your Bibles, man. My gosh, I mean,
Yeah.
that's some pretty violent stuff, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, for sure. The only profanities that I would stray from in the book is obviously like taking the Lord's name in vain and stuff.
Yeah.
I tried to be clear of that. And if I did use it, it was so there's a character who's supposed to be the devil, and he uses it
Yeah.
because he's cursing God and stuff like that. So I used it a little bit, but only in the context of that character,
Yeah.
because he's being hateful towards God. And it's not like it's just laced throughout the book, and more so about the violence and the content, because basically the story is about a cop who, part one anyway, is about the cop who kind of goes rogue and goes vigilante,
Yeah.
and he ends up killing a few people. And and some of the depictions in the book are kind of graphic, so those are the scenes and some of the swears that I'm like, people are going to look at this and go, you're promoting violence. How can you, again, that whole, how can you profess your faith this way? And
Right.
we're supposed to be lights to the world, not promoting this stuff. But
Yeah.
again, that's
Yeah, when I wrote Fundamentalist, my local church that I wrote at, there was a guy that gosh, I forgot how it came up, but we go way back, and he was just like, "Man, I didn't know that you wrote a book. Do you want us to try to get it into the church bookstore?" And I'm just like, no, I don't, and it's precisely because, and I actually wrote the book all the way through with the goal of, I'm going to talk exactly how I talk, and if a word comes to mind, I'm not going to avoid it. But then I went back. It kind of sounds like your process. Then I went back and I was like, maybe I should just not use any of those words, because for some people it will detract. And then I went somewhere in the middle. I was just like, you know what? For me to say heck instead of hell, I just think that's so silly. And if anybody's going to get super upset about that, then to each his own. But I was probably somewhere in the middle, and I actually am pretty comfortable, with that.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I've the same process. I mean, and my book is all about the human condition and emotions and experiencing like some dark feelings as a human being and things like that, because we all do. I mean, I just don't like when Christians pretend that life is fluffy, and
Right.
not that we want to like say life sucks and go out there and preach a message of despair to the world, because we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that either. But we do live in a world that's horrible. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
my whole process, just as a man now growing up, I've learned that the same quality that makes life so horrible is the same quality that makes life so beautiful too.
Right.
And that's kind of the ultimate message by the end of all my books that I'm hoping people will get. But when you're in the midst of the darkness, it's hard to be this happy-go-lucky, like everything is awesome Christian. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we're called to be that at all. I think we're called to be honest and real with people. I mean, Jesus himself was called the man of sorrows. He was sad and really anguished most of the time, and he did show joy and love and things like that, but he was also really hurt by things of the world, and he really felt the pain of all the awful things about our humanity.
Right.
And that's, as Christians, I really experienced the human condition in my own way, and kind of gotten through it. And I do have hope.
Yeah.
But the world is a bad place, and we can't avoid it.
Yeah.
So you make these movies like, some of these Christian movies that are so fluffy, and it's almost like they're trying too hard. I watched a few of them. They're trying really hard to deal with life's issues, but they do it in this cheesy way that anybody outside the church is not going to get into this. There's one movie, I forget what it was even called, but it was the same kind of story. It was about a police officer who a gang accidentally kills his son. I don't know if you've seen this one. At the beginning of the movie, a gang accidentally kills his son in like a drive-by or something like that. And then the whole movie is about racism, I guess, because the gang members were black, and then he's really bad at black people for the rest of his life. He becomes a racist person. But then his partner on the force that he has to work with, and at the start of the movie, is a black guy, and his partner is a Christian, and his partner's trying to minister him to the whole movie. And it's all about this guy's anger issues and stuff. And it wasn't bad. Like, the message that they were trying to do was good.
Yeah.
But just the production values and the acting and the dialogue was so cheesy that
yeah.
you laugh at it. It's almost you chuckle and laugh and kind of it's like this is cheesy. It's a joke. Like the actor can actually act, but the message is good. Like if you did it a little differently and just
Right.
changed your angle of storytelling, you could reach more people. I find, like it's just
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What is one thing I'm interesting about having written a nonfiction piece? When you sit down and write a fictional piece, do you what majority of the story is already written in your head, and then what percentage? That's the word I'm looking for. What percentage of the story was already written in your head, and then what percentage did you feel like, okay, I got to figure out what happens here, and do I want this guy to die right now? Or for you, I'm sure it probably varies with different authors, but what does that look like for you?
I had basically like 10% of the story written in my head when,
Gotcha.
when I sat down at the computer. Um, I had the idea where I wanted it to be a story about um, Christ's ministry on earth, but today. I had that idea. And the other idea I had was the main character was going to be kind of a parody or a reflection of a modern day, but kind of like more badass John the Baptist
Hmm.
character.
Yeah.
So he would be like a not a reincarnation, but just like a dude whose name is John, um, and he kind of the idea was that he makes the way. So
Yeah.
he like comes before with this whole passion about saving the world. He wants to save the world
Yeah.
with his crime fighting and all this stuff. He wants to change the world, make it a better place, and he thinks the avenue is to go after crime and evil. But as the books progress, I mean, without giving too much away, he kind of learns this isn't the only problem. Like I could stop all the criminals. There's still going to be a problem.
Right.
There's always the kind of one of the themes in the book is there's always someone left to fight.
Yeah.
So after he fights this guy and beats this guy, there's another guy.
Right.
After he beats that guy, there's another guy, and it keeps going up the chain. And then even if one of the characters asks him, and he kind of realizes how stupid he is, because the character asks him, well, because they live in Baltimore, and he's like, once you stop all the crime in Baltimore, then what? Then you're gonna go like to the next city and do
Yeah.
that, and then what are you gonna, like, how far are you gonna go with this? And he realizes, yeah, this is not going to solve the problem. And he eventually meets the Christ character and all these things. Um, but those are the two pieces that I had was the main character whose name was going to be John and be kind of a comparison to John the Baptist and the fact that it was going to be about like the gospel story
Hmm.
in our day and age. And that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, and the fact that to make this happen, it was so the devil approaches God at the beginning of the book and challenges him to a rematch.
Oh,
So
nice.
he says, if we did this again in this day and age with these people, I would beat you. I would win this time. So then
That's
God
intriguing.
says, okay, like you sure you want to do that? And because the devil's like, yeah, I got a plan. I got a card up my sleeve that you don't see. I'm gonna beat you this time. So he says, okay, and then he puts into plan the motion for the time travel so that he can do this, have his chance at the title again. And then those were like the three big elements that I had. But other than that, it was all fill in the blanks and
Yeah.
trial and error and writing. I just kind
After
of sat down and wrote. Yep.
Yeah, after all the flack that God's gotten about his story with Job, you mean to tell me you're making God do it again? He's going to do another experiment? That's awesome,
Yep.
man. Like what kind of time goes into that sort of project? Like take one book, with you not being a full-time author, what did your schedule look like to accomplish it? Did you get home after work every day and get busy on it? What did it look like?
Pretty much. I worked on a laptop at first, and just like you said, yeah, it was after work, wherever I could, sitting around on the couch or in my bedroom, just writing. But then my wife got me an iPad for Christmas one year, and I started bringing that to work with me. And then I was sitting there on my lunch breaks whenever I could. I used to take the bus to work.
Yeah.
So when I was on the bus, it was like an hour commute into Toronto from where I live. So on that commute, I would sit on the bus and write. It took me about a year and a bit to write actually all three parts of the book
Yeah.
in one giant manuscript. And
Dang.
then just so with the advice of a few people, they convinced me to split it into a trilogy. And then it took me actually more time to make that make sense
Right.
because the story made sense as a whole the way I'd written it. But then to split it into three separate stories for three different books was actually more challenging. So that took me I would say another 3 to 4 years to do all that.
Wow.
Like 5 years, almost 6 years in the process to finish all three of these books.
Yeah.
And then I'm releasing them one at a time. So part 1 and part 2 are done as of now, and part 3 is on the way.
Gotcha. So, done as far as released? 1 and 2 are released?
1 and 2 are done, edited. Even one has a second edition where I just changed the size of the font and changed the cover and stuff. So it has a second edition, and part 2 just came out in the spring. Gotcha. And those are both finished and ready to purchase. Yep. And part 3 is it's been edited. So now I just have to got to do a few minor adjustments to a couple things, and then it'll be out.
Yeah. What is the best place to direct people to?
The best spot would be Amazon, or if they like Kindle or Kobo, it's on there too. If you just search my author name, Ryan with the David, my middle name, Gerard, all three.
Yeah.
It should pop up if you search Ryan David Gerard, or you can, because I've typed in the Baptist on those sites, and a bunch of stuff comes up. So much stuff comes up. But right. So if you type in the Baptist, excuse me, if you type in the Baptist Judges Genesis, which is the name of part 1, it comes up. Whenever you type in the Baptist, a New Testament, then part 2 will come up.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been great, man. I definitely want to congratulate you. That's a big deal to write something that, good gosh, is long enough to put in a trilogy. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will encourage people to check it out, man. And thanks for being a listener here.
Yeah. Thanks, Joey, for having me.
Yeah, man.